We ready? We're ready. Stratford Zoning Commission is now open for public hearing for those petitions advertised to be heard at in this session. We have a full elected board this evening, so no alternates. Chairman, okay, I wish to announce that should any item on tonight's agenda take more time than anticipated, the public hearing may conclude at 11 p.m. The continued to another date, which will be established at that time. Any items not heard by 11 p.m. tonight will be heard at a continued public hearing. For the record, petitions to be heard this evening were advertised in the Connecticut Post on July 11th and July 18th. The properties were duly posted on July 18th. Ms. Phillips, if you would like to read the first and only petition this evening.
Yeah, I was just going to say first and only. Not a bad thing for a summer day. 2725 Main Street, petition of SAC Wireless, site plan review and special case to modify the previous plan of development to add new telecommunications equipment to the exterior of the town hall cupola in an LB zone.
Just for the record, this petitioner did not bring his certificates of mailing. It's up to us if we want to listen to it, and then we can vote on it at next month's meeting, or if you want, we can vote to continue it to next month.
Can I make a suggestion? And we've done this before. To listen to the petition, and we can vote on it, but it's only in effect subject to the petitioner delivering the mailing certificates, if you feel comfortable that they were actually sent out.
Okay. Well, I'm all for listening to it because we're all here this evening. When it comes time to voting on it, then we can decide at that point there if everyone's comfortable with that. Okay, is the petitioner present? You're it.
I hate to jump ahead in line.
Could you just put in for the record when you give your name to also state that you have sent out the mailing certificates?
If you have.
If you can hear me, my name is Kevin John Allen. I work for SAC Wireless. I am a construction manager and certified as an expert witness. We were not informed that we needed to mail out to adjacent property owners. Nowhere in our paperwork or instruction was that given to us. We would have gladly done it, especially considering I just drove 4 hours to come here. Okay, if I may speak to the issue, other than that, the plan that is being proposed actually puts less equipment, both in weight and size and electrical consumption, on this property. The radios are smaller, the ATP equipment is smaller, and the antennas are smaller both in height and weight. This equipment is being installed in anticipation of the 5G network that will be across America, across all providers. Sprint, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon are all right now bringing the country into 5G. If there's a need, I'll explain what 5G is. 4G, G being generation, first generation, second, third, fourth. 4G had a wonderful lifespan until people realized they could watch TV on their phones. And then the amount of bandwidth that it took to power all of those phones slowed down everybody else. And it came to a point where people could not watch television on their phone because there was not enough bandwidth for the demand. 5G has a different technology. A 4G antenna has half of it is transmit, half of it is receive, and that is its max. A 5G antenna has the same sub-parts to an antenna, but it takes the bandwidth that is normally used to transmit voice, when space, I space, talk space, to space, you, there's that much gap in the bandwidth. 5G incorporates this into what is called slicing wave technology, and when someone else, talk, someone else, to, someone else, you, it in effect fills in all the gaps and makes it cost efficient to the provider, better service to the customer, a far more effective 911 system because there's never a clog. It's just simply a better technology. And as I said, the equipment up on the top will be smaller. We agree wholeheartedly to paint everything to match as per the original agreement in 2000. And the equipment will be put up is smaller. It's less obtrusive. Not drastically, but it's about this much smaller.
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb because I know a couple of us are thinking the exact same thing. Is there any possibility of getting this new equipment that you're going to install or here inside the cupola?
I do not believe that to be technically feasible for two reasons. The material the cupola is constructed of is not stealth material. It is standard building material. I attempted to go up there. We couldn't get on the roof, but I do not believe they would construct something out of stealth material. Stealth material in its basic form is something that radio waves can go through without hindrance. If you put a piece of plywood up, that wouldn't work. If you put up a piece of AZT wood, that wouldn't work. It has to be stealth material. It's basically a polycarbonate plate that has no refraction, no reflection. So unless you want to rebuild the cupola, no, I don't believe that works. The other consideration is, looking at there are four corners in the cupola. They would be where you would hide something behind. But as I say, they are not stealth constructed, so it would eliminate the antenna's functionality.
So in short, your answer is no.
In short, my answer is no.
Okay.
They would not fit in the stealthing. It would look worse because you'd have to reconstruct the cupola, and in order to make the stealthing work, you'd have to make it go around all four sides.
Okay, well, we're not going to do that.
That would look like hell, on the record.
Mr. Henrik?
So, I don't remember, and I'll ask our zoning administrator to look it up, but I don't remember if it was while I was on the zoning commission or on the council, but you guys had come to us at one point. And let me just start by explaining, that cupola upstairs is the centerpiece of our town.
Oh, I like it.
And at this point in time, it looks like hell, because you guys have bastardized it with all your antennas. So I'm going to start off right there. When I was on the council of zoning and they came to us, they had said that they would be placed in an obscure position, they would be held tight to the pillars, it would be hard to see. They had actually at one point put black wires, which I notice you have up there now, and we brought them back before us and we had them change all the black wires to white wires because the black wires look like hell. Right now, that cupola looks like hell, and pardon my language, but you're asking us to modify it and do even more.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. That's
You're putting these, your picture here has pictures of these things in every opening, pointing out, adding more stuff.
Wait, I wish to correct your inaccuracies. I'm not adding more stuff. I am adding an equal number of antennas that are smaller, and I'm actually withdrawing equipment on the platform. There's less stuff.
Well,
second, may I, as you directed it, was not a part of the original Sprint application. I did not make those promises to you. I come forward here honestly. Whatever was promised you by others, look up on the record, please hold them accountable. SAC did not promise that. We have not fallen short of that. We have come in good faith. And certainly, I agree that everything should be white and everything should be as best as the situation can be. I agree with you.
And it looks hideous. And so to make any change or alterations, it's going to take a little more than your drawings here to convince me.
What changes are we making, sir? We're taking, if you had a bad light bulb.
Are you doing anything? Are you doing anything different to the cupola than is currently there?
We are removing existing antennas on the mounts that are present and approved, and we are putting different equipment on those mounts.
So you're making changes?
No, sir. We are updating equipment. There is
Those
a
are
difference.
changes. That is considered.
Let me bring this to your point.
No. Let me finish, and please don't interrupt me. No, you are making changes to the equipment that is there. That is a change. You had asked me what changes we're making, and I just explained to you, and you just said we're making changes to the equipment that's there. So those are the changes. So for me, first of all, until you modify what's there and make it correct, and show us that what's going to be there is better than there, beyond more than this little drawing there, I'm not buying into it. Because I was there the first time, and they said they would do it, and it's not done. It looks horrendous up there. And whoever did it, it was through Sprint and whatever the company you're representing, or the company that hired you to come and do this work and make this presentation. So, therefore, before I see anything or say anything, I would need to see more than just this.
With all due respect, may I comment? I had nothing to do with the original presentation. SAC had nothing to do with the original presentation. This presentation is done in accordance with Section 6409 of the Middle Class Tax Relief Act. There is no substantial change by defined in telecommunication verbiage. And granted, this facility was granted on April 19th, 2000. In the language of that, what is being proposed is an upgrade. It is not major changes. If I may make my illustration, if a light bulb went out, an incandescent light bulb, and you came to put light in this room, you can't buy an incandescent light bulb now because the technology is upgraded that you must use a halogen or an LED. That is replacing the light for service. That is not a substantial change to the situation, correct? It's making the light work. What we are proposing, as per the law, as per what we were granted, is not a visual substantial change. As an artist person, I would not disagree with your view of the cupola. I would say that if that was the council's view at the origin, why did they allow it? Obviously, the town thought it was allowable. So now it's there. We're all operating in good faith, and we apply as per Section 6409 with no substantial facility change to what was granted on April 19th, 2007.
And what's there now is not what was originally granted. And when I sat on the commission and heard the upgrades that were being proposed, they were changed. And now we have what's up there, which is far more extensive than what was originally proposed. So it's gone from what was to what is. So I don't know how we got from there to here. I wasn't on the board in 2000, so I know I didn't agree to it, but I know when I did sit on the board, I didn't agree to that. And I had them change it. The whole board had them come and change it because of how carried away they got and how obnoxious it was. So to say we were granted this, you weren't granted that. And if that's how you respect our property, by putting that kind of thing up, then...
Excuse me. You're calling me into being disrespectful. I am not disrespectful, sir. I have a very high professional acumen for the work I do. I drove 4 hours here by choice. I could have sent an underling. I don't want to make anything in your town worse. My goal is to make it better. And this equipment gives your users, your public, better facility, period. Now, as for what, quote, they did previously, which was, quote, more than was agreed to, I would say politely, sir, your quarrel is with them. You should have not given a final approval. You should have, as you say, make them go back and fix it. But this plan is accordance to the law. We have presented it in good faith. I am not in any way trying to make anything worse. I offer you this. Personally, I offer you this. Since there is a high degree of concern, love of this building, I will offer that. I will personally be the person who comes here with the people who does it to make sure they do it to a professional, courteous, and to your satisfaction. The plan supplied is upgrading technology. We're not changing, we're not growing, we're making smaller. Please bear that in mind. I'll be happy to show you before pictures of the equipment that's out on the ledge, and then after pictures. It goes from this big to this big. That's all I can say. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Phillips?
Okay, so if I can change the tone a little bit. What we have now, irregardless of how we got it, I understand that. What we have now will be appearance-wise, less congested, smaller equipment than what we see right now, correct?
The equipment that is on the lower level, the actual functional equipment, will be visually less from where I parked across the street.
Okay,
The
so,
radio heads are on a wall facing that way.
Okay.
They get smaller.
smaller, okay.
The antennas, to an untrained eye, I know 50 feet away, I can't tell 4 inches. You don't have to take my word for that. I'll show you one before and
Okay.
after.
And they'll be painted the
Yes,
same
ma'am.
color?
Everything will be white.
Okay. I know we need to move forward with an upgrade. I know we need to move into 5G for the betterment of our community, so that for all of us who walk around with cell phones. And I'm sure this is not going to be the last request for upgrades around the town. But it is important that it looks good, all right? Are there other types of equipment, 5G equipment, that could have been used that would also make it look better? In other words, let me tell you where this is coming from. When I was working in this body on another wireless antenna in another location, and we questioned it, it wasn't until several questions in, a month later, we found out, oh, if you had asked, we had this other mini system that we could have put in, and it would have been just fine, but you never asked for it. So now I'm asking, is this our only choice, the best choice of equipment that will provide the service necessary and be less visually obtrusive?
If I could ask, what was the carrier? Who was the other carrier?
AT&T.
Okay. AT&T's network operates on what's called small cell. It also is compatible with what they are putting in 5G. This is something that is to their network. I don't have a drawing board. Imagine there is a cell antenna, a cell tower here. It's by a school. Then imagine here, 4 miles away, there's another cell tower. It's by a shopping center. And over here, there's one where the residential area is. Okay, so in the morning between 7 and 9, and in the evening between 4 and 6, this one by the school and this one by the shopping center, those towers are overloaded. There are too many calls coming in a very small space. 5G has least cost routing. If this antenna is stuffed, this tower is stuffed, rather than drop calls, it offshoots the calls to this in a triangle. It's constantly offloading traffic to the least used port. This one has to match this one and has to match this one for them to talk to each other. Sprint has a network of these antennas. There are not alternates to make this work.
Okay,
Just because you have to speak English to English.
I understand
all
that.
across.
Yep. Okay. So we've got the best choice of equipment that meets your needs for a network, and this is their best option to make it look good in the cupola, is what you're saying. So
I
we're
spent
clear.
2 hours with my bosses arguing this point. And there isn't really a better technical answer.
Okay.
And frankly, if you have this network as your provider, you'll be very surprised at the after effect.
Now, and this will be my last question. Why do we need to put it up at Town Hall, not as opposed to the fire department or the police department or some other places where we also have a ceiling, a roof of antennas?
Why do you need to put it there? This is where the lease agreement was.
Okay.
They made that deal looking at the best RF possibilities. From the point up here, how much range does it have and what is the best number of customers? Maybe the other one you spoke of over there, there's a building in the way, or there's not as many customers, or the range is inhibited by other factors. Police radio transmission destroys cell communications. Wherever your police radio antenna is, there's a dead spot. So you can't have cell towers pointing at that. It interferes with the radio communications, it interferes with the cell.
Okay. Thank you for the lesson. I appreciate it.
Mr. Solhavy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ironically, I was on the town council back in April of 2000, Wish
I
I
love
was,
a guy that sticks around.
yeah, wish I was still 24 back then. That was a long time ago. But I do remember actually the discussion of this, in part because I could not vote on it. At the time, I was employed by Southern New England Telephone, later part of AT&T, which I'm no longer, and I couldn't vote on it because it was, I abstained potential conflict of interest, as I was advised by the town attorneys. However, I do remember that the discussion was that, again, analysis has been done of what were the optimal areas for it, and there is I believe it is still I want to call it a rent or you said lease. It's a financial arrangement between the town and the carriers for the access to that.
For the usage,
For the usage of
building,
it.
I believe there's close to 20 more years.
Okay. So I do remember that being agreed to. I also thought, and maybe you can confirm, are you the only ones up there, or are there other companies that have equipment up there at the same time?
To be quite candid, I wasn't able to get on the roof.
And I want to make sure we correct that. I want to make sure that you actually do
The
get
door was
access
stuck,
in there.
And we didn't want to make a big noise.
Okay.
That was it. I'm sure the door works. I asked offhandedly if I could look, but with more preparation, I'm sure we can get up there. As to other carriers,
Mm-hmm.
do you have another platform anywhere in this building with equipment like we have?
I've never been up there.
Then I don't, without that, another platform full of gear, I really wouldn't know how they did it, unless there's a room allocated to them indoors.
No, I'm just wondering if there was anybody else up there, because if there were more than one carrier competing for the space there and how much equipment in there, that could be part of why it gets somewhat congested in there. My question is really more, I understand the background of it, the 5G, and, you know, obviously I share the concerns Commissioner Henrik expresses on there, but we did, back in 2000, agree. So my only wish would be is that, again, you have the access to make sure that we actually can evaluate it and make any corrections that are necessary to make it better.
What corrections?
Any changes that you see necessary that from what's proposed here. One of the problems with what's just proposed here is that they're very technical drawings, and with something that's more aesthetic, maybe a rendering would have been something we can actually have an idea of what it's actually going to look like physically. And I think that may have been brought to us back then a long time ago. So I just want to make sure that you have all the access that you do need to, you know, if you need to make any adjustments to the plan.
I do not, considering that an architect engineer came to the site prior to the plan's drawing,
Okay.
I am not an architect. I would state that they do pretty good work.
Okay.
And if there were an error, first day of the project, I show up. I take the people upstairs, I show them how they get there, what they can't do. You can't go to the bathroom here. They're asking you to go to the bathroom here, where you park your truck, et cetera. If there was anything preventing this plan from being executed, day one, I will wave flags. They will not go forward if there's an issue. I have belief, this is about the 140th I've done. I believe that if the old situation was present, the new one will fit in its place, especially since we're making stuff smaller.
Yeah.
The cabling has to be redone because it's now way too long. So they redo it, make it white, but
The cabling, being white, is very important, because I remember when it was black, and that was not very sightly.
I understand.
Yeah.
I as a person who likes architecture, I agree with your concerns. I understand, but I can't change what was, and I am employed to execute.
Fair enough. Thank you.
And frankly, I like to sleep well, so I wouldn't do something half as you would worry. And I would be very honest to say I want to be able to walk out of this building friendly with everybody rather than, hey, where the hell are you going? So my goal is to do it politely, quietly, non-disruptively, and as per the plan. And you have right of inspection after the fact. So by all means, our goal is to make you happy as the plan is drawn.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further, Mr. Henrik?
Ask our planner, there's a history of these agreements. Can we get, before we take the final vote on those agreements, and I know they've come before us on more than one occasion, it might take a little time on your part, but before I voted on it, I would like to see what the original agreement was and what is transacted since then that got us to this point. I know I was at one of the meetings, which, I mean, I was on the council from 2003 to 2010, and then I was on the zoning commission after. So I don't know, I can't remember if I was on zoning or on, was that, we were on zoning? So it's probably during zoning, which was 2010 to 14. But they did come before us, and there was another agreement, and we did need to approve it, and there were some stipulations that we put along with it. But I would like to see those before we go any further to ensure that whether it was the gentleman's doing or somebody else's, if Sprint was involved with it, then whoever was involved with it, he represents Sprint, and it needs to be fixed before we can move ahead.
So you want to see the previous approval and the conditions on that approval? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the long and short of it is, yes, the agreement that was made and what conditions were made upon any subsequent approvals for upgrades or whatever they may have been, because there are significantly more receivers or whatever they may be up there. So I just want to know how we got from there to where we are, and are we still in line with that original agreement, or has time caused us to forget that agreement and people have taken advantage of our kindness?
Sure, I can certainly try, but just so you know, our office is in the process of, clearing up some old files, filing and all that, and most of our records are inaccessible until September. And this might actually, for two reasons, now that you're requesting more information, this has to be continued anyway. But addressing the first part about certificates of mailing, page 9 of the application form has a template letter that could be mailed out to, neighbors of the property whenever an application is submitted. The reason why we request certificates of mailing is because we want to give an opportunity to the neighbors of the property to come and voice their opinion if they have anything to say about this application. And that's the reason why you cannot vote on it subject to bringing the certificates of mailing.
agree.
We should wait till, he brings it back. And in the meantime, the neighbors get an opportunity to know what's happening on this property. And if we are continuing the hearing to next month, and somebody from the public wants to come and genuinely express their concern, that's an opportunity for them. In the meantime, I will look up the records and see if we have something there. And so that's a time it's appropriate to vote, I guess.
And if it takes till beyond September to get that, I'm not going to be comfortable voting on this until I at least see that. And I guess I'd ask our town attorney, is it appropriate that we hear this, or since the public isn't here to address it?
Well, as she points out, the application does have the template. So as the chairman pointed out, you can hear it, but then probably continue it until the certificates are done and then bring it to a vote.
Well, would we need to rehear it to allow the public to hear what's going on? Because part of it gives the public an opportunity to voice concerns, either for or against, but in order for them to voice those concerns, it's probably better advised to allow them to hear the public hearing.
Well, what we could do, Mike, is if, obviously, we're going to continue it to next month or the month after, depending on when you get the paperwork from the office. If we see that there are citizens that want to speak in regards to it, then we can ask him to give it another presentation.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it just, again, it allows them to hear what's...
I agree with the chairman. I don't think we should have to rehear it if no one is coming in with an objection or concern. But if you have somebody with a concern, then I'd ask the applicant to come back to be able to address the concerns.
I agree.
For us, we can order a tape and listen to it to be informed and vote, but for...
If somebody comes up with a particular concern.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Samita on that. My original understanding is that the certificates of mailing had been mailed out and that he just forgot to bring in the receipts. But now that I understand that they didn't go out, that changes everything. And I agree that the public should be given every opportunity to respond. I also ask this, is there a chance, now that we're going to continue it, that there would be a rendition or any kind of picture that can be shown, that what it might look like? Is that out of...
I can't speak for Sprint, but I doubt they'd absorb $2,000 for rendering. They've submitted the plans. If I may, when I met you in the office, ma'am, I asked you very clearly, is there anything else I need to do before the public hearing? And you said, no, this is fine. I have a note of that. May I also, if I can please enter this into the record? The subject application has been submitted in accordance with Section 6409A of the Federal Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2012, 47 ASCA.1455. Additionally, the FCC adopted further definitions of the law per FCC 14.153, adopted on October 17th, 2014. The language contained within this section does not limit the town from requiring any reviews deemed necessary. However, 6409 indicates, and I quote, "A state or local government may not deny and shall approve any eligible facilities request for modification of an existing wireless tower or base station that does not substantially change the physical dimensions negatively of such a tower or base station. It is the opinion of the Office of Planning and Zoning that the subject alterations do not substantially change the physical dimensions of the existing telecommunications equipment. It is the opinion of your planning and zoning in the letter that we received. Quote, it does not substantially change. Further, I would point to, according to 6409, from the date of application, there are 60 days for this body to approve the work, based on the fact there is a current contract, based on the fact that we are reducing size and weight, and at the end of 60 days, if you don't approve it by the law, it's approved. I come here in good faith. I asked you if there was anything else. Lord knows, I would have been very happy to do whatever you said. I had a month.
Yes. Can I?
I would have appreciated you
May
telling
I
me.
please talk?
Please.
I agree. I completely agree what you said. I'm not denying that.
Thank you.
Typically, when an applicant comes to us and asks us, do I need to do something else? That means if the application is incomplete, or a drawing is missing, or a statement is missing, that's what we check in our checklist and say, no, it's done. It is assumed in the application that, when you read the last page, it says letters of certificates of mailing should be mailed no later than 14 days prior to the public hearing date. So we assume that you've read the application, and we are not going to walk you through every word of it. We assume that you've read it, and you would bring those certificates of mailing either at the meeting or 14 days prior to the meeting. And there is miscommunication here, and I completely agree. And yes, you are right, our planning and zoning officers said that this can be automatically approved based on federal law, even if the town has a different opinion because it's not a substantial change. But again, the town has certain rules and regulations, and they have to abide by the process. This process is not different for you. Anybody who comes before these boards and commissions has to submit those certificates of mailing. That's the town law. And we have to go through the process just to make it, just to make sure that we have dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. That's all. And now, coming back to the board's decision here to bring back more information, when this is not so bad, why do you worry?
Pardon me?
When this is not so bad, why do you worry? We would just look at the additional information, that's all.
Ma'am, I have no worries. None whatsoever. I dislike being mischaracterized, and I did ask politely. My fault that I didn't fully read it and understand it.
Okay.
However, for the record, given this application, given the law, I come before you in honesty. It is obviously a case that you must approve. It's within your lease agreement.
Yes, and I think by next month you wouldn't finish your 60 days yet.
Pardon me? I couldn't
The
understand.
time frame, the 60-day clock,
From the date it was stamped.
from the date it was stamped, which was last month,
Right.
and today it's 30 days, and then I think by the next month hearing, it'll be like 60 days. I have to count the dates.
What was the date that it was submitted?
The date of submission was June 4th.
Okay.
So let me just,
So that would mean by August 4th, it should automatically be approved as we are compliant to the contract, the letter of the law, and the plans.
let me check. There is this app on Google. You can check exactly 60 days.
I can count I can count 2 months, ma'am. June 4th, July 4th,
I would just
August
have
4th.
a question for the town attorney. If the application wasn't submitted completely and properly, does the clock still start on that date, or does the clock start on the date that I mean, to say we didn't do the mailings, and the mailings are an integral part to the application process, and say, well, I just didn't feel like doing the mailings, or I didn't know, or I didn't read the paper, but then to say, oh, no, well, it started on the day, even though I didn't do what I was supposed to do?
I believe the regulation is that we had 30 days from the submission of the application to indicate that the application was incomplete. In
Which
this
was
case,
not.
the application it's not incomplete when it was filed, because it appears it was complete. There's a portion that comes from the public notice portion, if I may address the applicant.
Please.
I hear you, that it's going to be permitted by law. If this body were to vote on it without giving notice to the surrounding area, they're not representing the citizens, so they're feeling mostly in this case to give notice to the citizens surrounding it to give them an opportunity to be heard.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, sir.
Please. What difference will comment from a technical nature come forward?
If I may, it has nothing to do with what the difference is.
So then if I may, the public will come forth and say, we don't want that. Okay, we have an agreement. It is permitted. If I stand here and say, okay, we're not making a change, you've got it.
And what'll happen is I'll stand here next month and I'll say 6409 says this. But I do think the people in the town have the right to hear.
I wish I would have been told that. I would have gladly complied.
I think the entire town apologizes for this.
Well,
All right,
it's,
well, all right, we're,
Application, and if somebody says he's going to ensure that it's done properly and doesn't want us to follow our simplest regulations from the start, leads me to believe that, you know, maybe he doesn't care what the people think, but he's going to care what we think when the
Mr.
towers
Henrik.
go up.
Mr. Henrik,
hold on.
I
I will
care
call-
very much
Excuse
about
me.
the public.
Okay, I'm running this meeting, not you, okay?
By all means, sir.
Okay? We are going to let the public speak,
I'm happy to.
okay?
But I
And
don't
we are
like
going to
being
listen to them.
mischaracterized.
And if we need you to do another presentation, we're going to
Oh,
ask
if
you
you're
to do
going to
that.
have it, I'll be here.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a good chance that we may have a meeting, I think, August 14th. We're scheduled for one.
Can I interrupt once? August 3rd is when the 60 days completes. So if you want, you could call in a special meeting before that, if that's something that you would consider.
Well, we also need the information from Mr. Henrik so he can weigh in properly.
But at that point, if the mailings aren't done, then, you know, what do we do there?
I'll have to look at the regulations as to what happens if the mailings aren't done in the 60 days. I don't have an answer for the commission on that.
Can we start with more of a positive of, let's do the mailings, all right? Because this is escalating into a mountain. Let's just do the mailings right away, all right? Turn the receipts into the town planner, all right? We have some options, either a special meeting or we'll dick around about the 60 days. But we may not have an issue here. The public may not come back with a problem. I'm the first one to want to give the public an opportunity to speak. And they may come back and say, no, we don't like this. And then we'll say, well, there will be a special meeting, or we're going to ask for your allowance to come back and service. But let's start to see if we have a problem before we create one, is all I'm asking. Just do the mailings, and then take it from there.
Correct.
Yeah, and there's one more problem here. I was just looking at it. The mailings have to be done at least 14 days prior. And considering that today's 24th, even if he did it tomorrow, he has 14 days, like until August 2nd. Then again, he meets his threshold of 60 days by August 4th. So no matter what we do here or there, after 60 days, the town has little control over the approval.
Correct, but at least if the mailings are done, Ms. Phillips is correct, if the mailings are done, I'm hopeful that there'll be no response at all and we won't have to deal with these issues.
But then you want to vote on this at the next month's hearing?
Well, I think that's the chairman's call.
Okay.
Is how you want to handle it.
Based on advice from the town attorney.
60 days is a firm date, and we can't change it whether the mailings are done or not, I have to look at the regulations. I can't tell you off the top of my head what the failure date mailings does to the 60 days.
May I ask a question?
Okay.
To what source will I receive, or whom should I inquire for the people necessary to be mailed to?
They have to be everyone who abuts 2725 Main Street.
By adjacency, property line to property line? Same thing. Where can I gather that information?
Town clerk?
I shall inquire to the clerk tomorrow and ask for, given this 60 days, as timely a response as possible. What is the town clerk's name, if I may ask?
Susan Pollock.
Thank you. Pauling.
Pollock. P-A-W-L-I-C-K.
Even though that the 60 days may expire, all right, I think there has to be a date on it, whether it's the administrative meeting or the regular zoning meeting, this body still needs to vote. And if we vote differently than what the approval process per the 60 days is laid out, then it'll have to be to the town attorney to help us sort that out through the courts. But I don't think it makes, at this point, the difference whether it's on the 14th or what's the next date after us, our regular meeting? Public hearing, Smitha, when is our regular meeting, the 28th? No, what's the one after that? It's the 28th, right?
28th.
Whether it's the 14th or the 28th is not going to make a difference. So even if you put on the,
Unless we got,
on the certificates of mailing that the next meeting is going to be on the 28th as a continuance for the public hearing, if the public does come out and says, hey, we have a really big problem, then we as a body will hear it and we will make a decision. And if we decide something different, then we talk to our town attorney. And it then becomes the way it goes. Otherwise, we might get lucky, and who knows, maybe the townspeople will say, hey, that's an improvement. It's smaller, it's more features, whatever, and nobody shows up, and then it's a moot point.
I do have Section 6409A checklist here that the town attorney passed on, and I do look at the timing here. And again, I spoke to Mr. Jay Hibansky, Planning and Zoning Administrator, specifically about the certificates of mailing before he left for his vacation, and he said the state statutes do not require it, but it's the local law. Now, my question to the town attorney is, when it says in this section 6409A, the paragraph under check application for completeness, the clock stops 60-day deadline from running, and the local government must notify in writing within 10 days that supplemental submission is also incomplete. So my question is, does the local law have authority to override a federal and state law in this case? And the second thing is, are we missing out an opportunity to actually address something through conditions of approval by voting today, as opposed to continuing the hearing and missing that opportunity because the 60-day period lapsed and we can't even request some modifications to this that we could have possibly requested at this meeting?
The federal FCC statute controls as to the approval of the application so long as it doesn't substantially change it. That has to do with just the approval of the work that they're doing. The federal law doesn't surmount the local law as to notice to the surrounding people and such. That's something local. Even state law, which may not require it, to Ms. Phillips' point, if our regulations require notice, an opportunity to be heard, the federal law has nothing to do with that. The 60 days running is something different. The 60 days is it's in the FTC, but it's also within our own regulations. So if we don't act on it within that time, it will statute clearly, so the FCC statute clearly trumps our regulations insofar as the approval of it, so long as it doesn't, if not additional burden.
Mr. Henrik?
So the premise is based on, so long as there aren't substantial changes from the original agreement or other made agreements, but we don't know what that original agreement was, and we don't know what those other agreements are. So where we are now could not be what was in the original agreement. So if they're making changes to what's there and it's not something that's part of the original agreement, then they can't make changes to them.
If I may, I'm going to quote the applicant, which is, it says, shall approve any eligible facilities request for modification of existing wireless tower or base station that does not substantially change the physical dimensions of such tower or base. I'm of the opinion it's going to have to do with what's there. So whatever was approved in 2000, whatever's there now is the applicant, what their applicant's looking to change.
But we don't know that what's there was approved originally. And they've come to us, I know they've come to a board that I sat on and requested modifications, and we had them change them. So I don't know, what's up there is significantly more than when I sat on the board the last time. So, but
But I'm just going to quote back to the statute, which is a modification of existing wireless tower base station. I think approved. I can't tell you that we would succeed on a fight on whether what was approved in 2000 and what's there today. There is an existing tower today, and they're making an application to change it that is not substantially changing the physical dimensions.
so then how do we monitor what goes up there if what's up there is not part of the original agreement, and somebody just went up there and put it up there and said, hey, this is what we're doing? I mean, if what we agree,
For any other location in town hall, I presume somebody from town hall would know.
Zoning enforcement officer.
Somebody would know what was being put up on our own building. I hear your question.
you'd like to think so, but it happened before, and that wasn't the case, so.
I hear your question. I don't have an answer clearly for you. I can tell you that if Mr. Vansky and I went over this regulation and went over all of the surrounding cases and such, and there's lots of case law and discussion about how local administrations are going to have to change their zoning laws to deal with this FCC ruling, because people, towns just like us, are concerned with the growth. We can get into specifics of whether or not whether or not the mailing of the cards was material to the application, and whether that stays the 60 days. I don't have that material in front of me. I can't answer that question. I can say that to Ms. Phillips' point, we should see whether we're going to have a lot of community concerns, but even if they came and voiced a concern, we're still facing an FCC ruling we're not going to get around.
And we still don't know that whether they are or aren't substantial changes, because, we've got a drawing on a piece of paper, we don't have pictures, we don't have documentation, so.
But if you deny the application based on that and they appeal you, my professional opinion, you won't win that appeal. You take the court's going to look at this FCC ruling and say, you're stuck with the equipment you got, because it's modification of existing wireless tower. However we got here, it's an existing wireless tower. So I can't answer the question about the lack of the certificates, but I can tell you, having read the regulations, I think that we are compelled to approve, as Mr. Vansky pointed out, because we're compelled by a federal statute.
Mr. Hibansky has also said that he says, in the opinion of the planning and zoning, that the alterations do not substantially change. So that would he pretty much has, as the zoning administrator, made a call on that. Would that be correct, sir? Yes. Okay.
If I may add to that, the town attorney just passed on this section 64098 to me, and Appendix A of that defines what FCC defines as substantial change on page 4. And after having read this, I can say that none of this that is being proposed is substantial change.
Can you just tell us what that is?
Sure. The FCC has determined that a modification substantially changes the physical dimension of a wireless tower or base station if it meets any of the following criteria: towers outside public rights of way, increases height by more than 20 feet or 10%, whichever is greater, protrudes from edge of tower more than 20 feet or more than the width of the tower structure at the level of the appurtenance, whichever is greater, towers in public rights of way and for all base stations, increases height of tower or base station by more than 10% or 10 feet, whichever is greater, protrudes from the edge of the structure more than 6 feet, involves installation of more than the standard number of new equipment cabinets for the technology involved, but not to exceed 4 cabinets, entails any excavation or deployment outside the current site of the tower or base station, would defeat existing concealment elements of the tower or base station, or does not comply with conditions associated with the prior approval of the tower or base station unless non-compliance is due to an increase in height, increase in width, addition of cabinets, or new excavation that does not exceed the corresponding substantial change thresholds. Now, after reading this, coming back to Mr. Hendrick, what he asked, I think this has a glitch here when it says does not comply with the conditions associated with the prior approval of the tower or base station.
It also talks something about concealment. And we're out beyond concealment.
Yeah, so I don't know how you would want to interpret that, and I would leave that judgment to the town attorney.
Mr. Chairman? May I say something?
Okay. Eric, go ahead.
Mr. Henrik, I'm sorry I've had bad experiences with others. I take it seriously. I'll do what I can that you can say at the end I did what I promised. My second point is, how do you know what's up there now? You had a set of plans by the previous whomever, submitted, approved, and then the building department went up and inspected them. And I can tell you from personal life experience, when you build this stuff, the building department goes over it very much with a fine-tooth comb. So I would expect that this community giving that authority to the building department and the inspection would be aware of and know what is present. It isn't my responsibility to do an asset survey of what is present. It's my responsibility to present the growth and to show the example that it would actually be substantially less than is there. It also consumes about 25% less power, so it's more efficient, better for the public. I'll go along with whatever reasonable things I'm asked to do. I wish I could have done it before just to make you happy. And I'm sorry that you've had a bad experience. It hasn't been with me or SAC.
Well, the building department doesn't know the agreement. What the building department does is make sure that the equipment installs complies with the local building codes. The agreement that is made between your company, Sprint, or whoever it may be, and the zoning commission has nothing to do with the building code or the building official. So when he goes up there and he inspects, he ensures that it is installed properly, not that it was installed to any specific agreement that was made between the zoning commission. But what I see up there, and if you want, we can walk out and take a look. I can walk out there and look, and I know what was there, and I know what's there now, and I know how hideous it has become. And that's how I know what's up there. And I don't care what company it is. I know what's up there. I know that that is the centerpiece of our town, and it has become a hideous landmark that's been destroyed by cell companies putting towers up there that maybe don't meet the agreement. To come in here and say it meets the agreement and I'll do better doesn't fix the problem. And then how do we monitor it? Like what was read, it might not meet the original agreement. We don't know because we don't have it.
May I? Our goal, when we propose building plans, we assume that this august body is aware of there is an agreement. We assume, and you're incorrect with what you said, the building department has a responsibility twofold. One, to make sure that it is built by code, and two, and primary, that it is built according to the plan. There was a mantra in this industry: build the plan, build the plan, build the plan. Every building inspector I've ever met walks up and says, did you build it according to the plan? Now, whatever agreements you made in the past, truthfully, have very little bearing on going forward. We will do our best to do our best, but whatever ill was done before is not of our making, and we are proposing to do something better. As to go back and review the agreement, what's currently there has been approved by you people. It was passed. It was given approval by your departments. So we are only looking to change the equipment for the better in something that was already approved and has a current lease agreement. That's our goal.
And until we see that agreement, we don't know that. And we don't know what it was approved because we don't have any record of it.
You don't have a record of the building inspection for the prior? That's public record, sir.
I don't, it's not presented to me. We can only make our judgment based on what you guys provide.
Would you assume that since
No.
it's been there for 4 years?
You understand the meaning of the word assume?
Yes, I've
No,
heard
I
it
don't
twice here.
assume.
I've heard it
And
twice.
and I am in the building business, and I know what the building inspector does, and I know what he inspects. And he doesn't know that it's been agreed to. He knows that there was a permit pulled, and he knows that he needs to go and inspect it. But he
And to check
doesn't
it
know,
against the
he
plan.
doesn't know, he doesn't know the stipulations of the agreement that was made by a cell carrier and the zoning commission. That's not in his purview.
I agree. I agree with you. But he does have the plan in front of him, and he walks around and measures cabinets and such. You seem to have an argument of how it turned out.
Okay, we're
I
gonna
would suggest-
continue this to next month. We're done discussing this at this point. We're gonna
Make a motion to continue the hearing.
motion by Mr. Hendrick to continue, second by Mr. Solhavy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We
Mr.
will
Chairman?
see you either next month or in a couple weeks. You contact the town clerk, get the abutters that you have to at least get mailings out to, and we will juggle times with the
Will the
office.
hearing be within the 60 days?
We will do our best to get it within the 60 days, yes.
will-
Well, if your mailings have to be out 14 days prior to, now you're going to make us beyond the 60 days. And that now will fall in the hands of the town attorney on whether you caused a situation here.
If I may,
Well,
all efforts, and my leasing people have talked to both yourself, I believe, and Jay about this ongoing from the day I came here.
okay, we're done discussing this. I don't know what you're talking about right now. We're done discussing it. We made a motion to continue it to next month.
I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The law is pretty clear, as you agree. I appreciate it, 60 days taking.
Okay, thank you.
Are we done, or are we
Actually,
continuing?
I have,
As long as it has nothing to do with this last petition. Because we're done with that.
It's a general question. I remember when we took a lease, and there was a little bit of public pushback.
Ms.
One-
Phillips, we are done talking about the cell tower. We are done
I'm not
discussing
talking
this.
about this particular application. I'm asking a general informational question.
Doesn't sound general to me.
Is there a law? I remember that the state had something called a site survey that had a comment period that required the carrier or the network to notify the public when something was going in. I remember we had to do it. I remember going out to Longbrook Park, the meeting with the state, they came out. Do you remember anything like that?
There is some stuff having to do with public utility things. I don't think it has to do with cell, but the FCC ruling changed all that, and that was only a few years ago.
Oh, okay, so it may not even now be even there.
The FCC ruling changed all that.
You were speaking on the siting commission, because I was at that same Longbrook Park meeting.
Does that exist anymore?
Yes, the siting commission does. Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me,
Mr.
spell your name for me.
I'll give you a business card if you wish.
Oh, that'd be even better.
Mr.
Solheim?
Chair, may I just ask a parliamentary inquiry? Just, are we required, I'll wait for the town attorney's attention, because the question is through you to him. Very good. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the town attorney, are we required in our motion to continue to set an actual date, or is next month sufficient? I just want to make sure that we don't.
I think you continued it to the, I think what you said in your motion was to continue to the next meeting, right?
Correct.
The next meeting.
I think that's part of the motion. But you also said or sooner if it's deemed that the 60 days is material.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the motion was correct. Thank you.
Okay, item number 1 on other work is the approval of the minutes from June 26,
Chairman,
2000.
make a motion to approve the minutes of June 26,
Motion by
2019.
Mr. Hendrick to approve. Do I have a second? By Mr. Solhavy. Any discussion on it? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
All right?
Opposed? Campsite, nothing. Zoning enforcement study, nothing. Accessory application, sediment, beep, beep, bop, boop, boop. Okay, under 7 something, I don't know why, rules of order. Just everyone has had a chance to go over the rules of order. The one thing that Mr. Hibansky has discussed to change is under number 11. The chair shall be responsible for securing an alternate member when a regular member is absent or has a conflict. Does anybody have a problem with that?
Chairman.
I have a question.
Ms. Phillips?
Why was this change requested? Is any of the board changed it? I mean, it's been this way since 2016, 17, and I don't even know if this changed, but what was the purpose of, why do we need to make this change?
I just felt that it was in the best interest of the board in scheduling and calling alternates that I would like for myself and then the future chairs to be able to do that.
But what's the benefit of it?
Sometimes I can get it's better, or I can get a hold of somebody better than the zoning office can.
You can get, so that are you saying that some of the alternates don't
shorter-
respond to the planning and zoning administrator
On
sufficiently?
a shorter time period, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I have better access to some people than the actual zoning office.
That doesn't say much about our alternates if they don't respond to our zoning administrator. Is that the only reason that we're doing this, because you have better access at 3 o'clock or short notice?
I don't see any other reason needed.
I have some concerns. I will hold my comments and let others speak, but I do have some concerns.
Okay.
And I'll come back to it.
Anyone else would like to weigh in here?
So, Mr. Chairman, so this replaces section 17, is that correct? Because I see it crossed out here, but not yellow, not highlighted.
I believe Mr. Hibansky crossed that also.
Because section 17 is a somewhat unwieldy way of doing it. 2 lists, one for public hearings, one for administrative sessions. Be perfectly frank, this is, I don't know how much this was followed in the number of years that I've been on. During my chairmanship, we did rotate among it, but it was pretty much at the discretion of the chair to begin with. And we had and I can't believe I actually had it with me tonight. There's actually a substantial body of regulations on and opinions regarding chairs. And there actually is a ruling from 2000 by Attorney Alberg. It says, I do believe that it is incumbent upon the chairman of the zoning commission to determine how and to what extent such alternates may participate in any zoning discussions. Yeah, so I was just curious because it doesn't seem like this is something that's actually been used in recent years. I've yet to see a list based on seniority and one for public hearings and one for administrative sessions. So that was my only comment on that.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything?
Well, I guess I just wonder if with all the responsibilities, and I know Tiny typically calls us, and sometimes she gets a little overwhelmed with her workload, just to remind us about our meetings, and I still get a reminder call every month, but most months, sometimes she calls and says she forgot to call. But just with the overwhelming responsibilities of the zoning commission and their office and their day-to-day responsibilities, if it would be easier just for the chair to take over that responsibility and ensure that he has a full board sitting with him to conduct business.
Okay, thank you.
Has Mr. Habansky said he's not able to perform this role or something? Is this his request?
It's, he and I have discussed it, and he does not weigh in one way or the other on it.
Well, I agree that 17 can be a bit unwielding the way it reads. I think the practice was more of each alternate was rotated through pretty evenly. If you go down the list and you keep rotating and rotating how it comes up, and it was pretty fair. And if an alternate couldn't make it that particular meeting, you go to the next alternate. But it was a revolving, pretty even list, and we had no problem. I mean, all the other boards function in that matter, and everybody had an equal opportunity to participate. And I think that it gave voice to every alternate who put forward. I think it also allowed other opinions of if a member was not able to make it, it allowed that member to express their concerns to the chairman, or at least have an alternate who might, doesn't mean they will, have some of the same thoughts. It's the luck of the draw. But it was very fair. That was really the big part of it. It was very fair. One of the concerns I think I called you on several months ago is that I noticed that we have 3 alternates, but one of the alternates said to me they never get a call, and even though they've been available. And I don't think that their participation would have changed anything, may or may not, but it became somewhat suspect that why isn't all the alternates rotating pretty evenly? And it has been the practice of that in the town through all the land use boards, pretty without exception. And to do this only to say that, well, you can call up people easier at the last minute, and the administrator can't, my response would be, well, that's the administrator's job. That's what they're getting paid to do. And as a chairman, when I was chairman, I checked in with my zoning administrator, with Jay Hibansky, to say, hey, if there was any alternates, we would talk and help. But I helped, but he would rotate it. That was his job. And Tiny making the phone calls helped. I think that was good, but it was very, very fair. So this introduces an element where the chairman only decides who becomes the alternate. That was my concern.
Okay. I'll go back 6, 7 months ago where you were unavailable to sit in a couple of meetings. Several phone calls had been made out to the alternates, and none of them could make it. I had happened to be in the office. I made a phone call to an alternate that I know could make it. She showed. She sat in here. The next month, the same thing. You were unable to make a meeting. You recused yourself for whatever reason it was. And,
Let me respond to that, because I asked about, in fact, I told Mr. Herbansky on both occasions that there was an alternate that was available, and he was waiting for a call. Mr. Herbansky said to me that he couldn't call them because he was, to say the right words, he was no longer allowed to make those calls, that only the chairman could make those calls. And he was not making the calls to the alternates. And I found that concerning. And therefore, that alternate who I had arranged with, who was next in line, not that I was going out of sequence, he happened to be next in line, never received a call.
first off, it was not up to you to arrange for another alternate to sit in for you.
Granted, but I did make sure that I was following my responsibility to make sure that in the event that I wasn't here, there would be somebody in the sequence who could sit in, somebody. And that was just being responsible on my part.
Anyone else with any,
Was it when, I'm just, I guess, a little confused on that role that you play there, contacting alternates. Is it to make sure they know what to say? You said something, you coach them or guide them, or
No, I don't coach him or guide him. I just check to see if somebody's available.
I thought you said you wanted to make sure they were prepared, or I didn't know what.
No, just to make sure that they are available, that they got the materials, because we had a problem at one point that some of our alternates weren't receiving the materials.
So, based on that, I mean, you're kind of saying that you don't think you're kind of saying the zoning administrator office is a little overwhelmed and won't take care of that responsibility, so you're making sure that you're taking
No.
care of it. Well, it's kind of what you said.
No, I didn't say that.
I've got the floor, excuse me, I've got the floor. So that is what I heard, and I think what this motion does is says just what you're saying, is that the chair wants to make sure that it's done properly in the same way you did.
Let me correct your understanding, please.
Well, I just, speaking on what you said, so.
Well, if there is a misunderstanding, let me correct
If you
it.
want to clarify it, go ahead.
I will clarify it.
Clearly.
I will clarify it. I think that the chair certainly can work and does, and I was a chair. I believe the planning administrator does a fine job of calling all of the alternates when he's allowed to. I believe that I did check to make sure that there would be an alternate and that they were receiving, but that's just for me to check in with Mr. Urbanski. It still would be the administrator's responsibility, and he has been able to do it. What concerned me was he was not allowed to make those phone calls. He actually said to me that he no longer is able to do that because he's been asked by the chairman not to make those phone calls. And that was concerning to me. So I am asking, why is that the case? And then we got this change that says the chair shall be responsible for securing an alternate member.
Okay, well, first,
I would amend it. I've got the floor, please. I've got the floor, please. I'd like to see it so that there would be some assurance that all the alternates would be rotated, even if the chair wants to do the job, that all the alternates would follow some rotation that was fair regardless of who they are.
okay, just for the record, Mr. Hibansky was never told that he couldn't do it. He and I had discussed it, and it was decided that we were going to change this, we were going to vote on it, and that's what.
I'm putting it into the record what I was told.
And with all that being said, any other further discussion on it? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Oh, motion approved by Mr. Henrik. I have a second by Mr. Vacola. All those, any further discussion? Seeing none?
Yes, I want to make one last statement. I do want to put to the record formally that I do believe that this is unfair and suppresses all the voices that are available to the public, to this board, to participate. I do believe that the change is unnecessary and inconsistent with the other land use boards. And finally, I believe that it interjects a personal bias and particularly sets up the nuances to manipulate the votes in a way by the chair to select who should be at an alternate and who shouldn't. So it suppresses it. It's just not fair.
I
That's
don't-
my comment for the
I don't see how
record.
you can say that when most of the time we're using another Democrat.
It's not about party. I don't care about party.
It sounds like what you're saying to me, but
No, I said that one member. I never mentioned
We're not going to
party.
argue this anymore, and all those in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed?
I oppose.
Passes 4-1. Health Department review of zoning applications. Did everyone read the letter that went out from Andrea?
We read it, Mr. Chairman. Is there action required on this?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
There's no.
It's just for general information, that's all.
Okay, I would, just as a comment, back to the administrator or the director, we always do value the comments of department heads. In fact, going back to a previous application, which I remember very distinctly, we've asked specifically for their comments on there because as the people that are the professionals in their field and are full-time in contact with the public, often they can bring things to light that are very important. So I encourage them as well as other department heads to continue their communications to our board.
Just to add, we do send everything to fire, building, health, and, all wetlands, conservation, everyone. Sometimes it so happens that, their comments come in late after the hearing. Again, this is a problem of staffing. Like, I just want to let you all know that between Jay and me, we're managing zoning commission, planning commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, Architectural Review Board, walk-ins. Again, zoning enforcement officer goes for field inspections, so during the time when he's unavailable, we are there to assist the public, accepting applications, doing all this stuff. So sometimes we don't get the opportunity to track back and talk to the departments and say, hey, could you submit your comments? We assume that they know, we give them the deadline, we assume that they get us back those comments by the deadline. And sometimes we might have missed chasing people, and this was one of those rare opportunities where it was missed, I think.
Mr. Chairman, is this being presented as a vote?
No, just general information. Nothing under goal settings. Entertain a motion to adjourn? By Mr. Solhavy, second by Mr. Vacola. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you very much, everyone.